Hi and welcome to the tutorial on monster sculpture making. You're going to be using a monster can to create a sculpture with a monster coming out of it. There's a number of workflow processes that you should follow to make sure that this project is successful. The where to start is with our monster can, which we're going to rupture. To rupture our can, we're going to cut it open. This is where our monster is going to come out of our can. Think about where you want to cut it, whether it's the front of the can or the back of the can, and what areas are going to be covered the most. So if you're going to be opening it right up, you probably want to cut the back of it so that you can see the artwork on the back of your monster. Once you've made those cuts on the can, you need to be really careful because it's super sharp. Make sure that you use little bits of masking tape to pinch and place them around those edges. Don't run your fingers along them, just use a little pinching motion, and small bits of tape are much more successful than long bits. We now need to stabilise our monster can. This is so that it can hold the weight of the clay when we add that. So you can do this in multiple ways, but toothpicks and skewers are a great start, just snapping them to the length that you need and taping them into place. We also need to use Plaster of Paris to give some weight to the bottom of our can. Now you can do that either right at the start, which you can see I'm doing here because the can was falling over, or you can do it after you've added the skewers into it. You can even add the plaster in and add your supporting skewers later on in the process, as you'll see I do with my second sculpture. You're going to need some cardboard circles, so trace around your can and cut them out of cardboard, and these are going to be used to block off the tops and the bottoms of your cans. You can see here I didn't like where I had cut the rupture, so I've actually just opened it up more, and again I'm just making sure that I'm covering those cut areas. Aluminium foil crushed up into circles is going to fill those voids in the tops and bottoms of my cans before I cover them with a cardboard circle, which I'm then going to just tape into place to make sure it's all settled and doesn't fall out. Because we're going to be using air drying clay as well as paper mache on this, it doesn't stick well to the aluminium can. So we're going to be using masking tape just to cover the big main areas that we're going to be wanting to add air drying clay to. So do this around the lip of your can, the inside of any ruptured areas, as well as if there's particular places on the outside of the can that you want it to stick to. Next phase is to engineer our internal structure of our monsters. So this is things like tongues, tentacles, arms, or larger horns that we might have in our design. This internal structure is to hold the air drying clay, so it doesn't need to be super detailed, but it does need to be firm enough to hold the weight of the clay. Make sure that you're using scrunched up aluminium foil, as it tends to mold and shape a lot better. You need to think about how this structure is actually going to attach to your can as well. So you can insert skewers or toothpicks into the end of your modelled piece of aluminium foil and then insert that into the cardboard pieces within the mouth of your monster, or you can use tape to attach it if it's on the outside of the can. Things like arms or tails or horns, you need to keep them fairly close to the body of your monster. Anything that's kind of sticking out away from the body does run a significant risk of breaking off and cracking as it's drying. So try and keep things really as close to the can as you can as you're moulding them through, like you can see on the tail here. Our next phase is to reinforce our monster can with paper mache. So you're going to be using PVA glue and tissue paper, paper towel or serviettes. Paint the PVA glue on and then apply your tissue paper to it. It's best if this has been scrunched up and has texture to it. Anything that's flat means that the air drying clay is going to not stick as well as it could. So just go over all of your taped areas with the PVA glue and a coat of the PVA glue and the tissue paper, and just make sure it's all glued down really nice and thoroughly. It doesn't need to be super neat at this stage because you're going to be coming back and covering it with air drying clay anyway, and that's where you're going to put the fine details. This is my second sculpture. This one I'm looking for a bit more of a cutesy kind of look to it rather than the fierce dragon snake style of my other one. So I'm adding some quirky little eyebrows. I'm going to add a nose onto this guy, so you can see I've used just aluminium foil and then tissue paper to hold that aluminium foil in place, and just made sure that I'm using my brush in a dabbing motion to get the tissue paper into all of those creases. Once that phase is thoroughly dry, we're going to sculpt and fuse using air dry clay. I recommend you also have a damp cloth, not wet. You have some modelling tools, you need some texture materials, and you also need a plastic bag to store your work in. So you're going to be using just small, thin pieces of air drying clay to wrap around all of those parts that you had previously paper mache'd. At no time should you add water to the clay, it will make it crack as it dries out. If your hands are getting sticky, keep your hands clean and moist with your damp cloth, and this will also help you to smooth out the clay. So every now and then just wipe all of the dry clay from your hands off on the cloth. Make sure that you smooth any edges into the tin where you want the can artwork to show through with the edges of the clay. You'll need to start to bulk out areas as you sculpt forms, like what you can see I'm doing here with the tonsils and the uvula, the top of the mouth. But make sure that there are no areas that are thicker than your thumb, because they will not dry out and they do risk cracking. You can also start to add some sculptural elements in. I'm doing like a skeletal type part, like I'd see on the top of a mouth, the roof of a mouth. Make sure that when you do add any bits like this that you're using a sharp tool to score the clay, which means scratching it and then pressing on your added bit quite firmly and just using a modelling tool to rub in the edges of where they join in. It just makes sure that things won't necessarily crack off as it starts to dry out. Make sure you always turn your sculpture around and upside down as well to check out every angle of view to see where you might be missing some parts. As you're modelling the facial features, start to think about your teeth. Okay, if you're using already made teeth, place them in and then add your lips. Okay, if you're going to model them out of clay and add them in. So the lips are just a long sausage shape, smoothed out, and then you're going to blend the bottom of it down. Eyes, you need to build up that facial area and build up your eye mounds, but make sure you do press an imprint in and put your eyeballs in there. I've just used some tape to cover these, and then I'm making my eyelids out of a circle disc, which I've cut in half. I'm smoothing out that edge, and then I'm going to place them over the top of those eyeballs that I've put in there. And you can use any type of eyeballs that you like. Be really conscious of how you put your eyelids on. The angle will give you different moods from angry to happy to sad. Once you've got it in place, you just smooth in that top part of it, trying not to touch the bottom part where your eyelashes would normally be. Just let it go. And you can see here another lip that I've added on, just as another sausage shape, and I'm just smoothing in that top section, trying not to touch the area where it connects in with the teeth, so it looks like a rounded lip. Details and textures really do make your monster. Make sure that you don't have any thin, fragile areas though, because they will break off. Try to keep with more solid forms, and make sure you're scratching and scoring all of the bits and pieces that you add on. Think about textures and patterns that you can press into the clay using pens and pencils. Netting and mesh is awesome for monster scales. You can press it in, you can put really thin bits of clay over the top of it, and then when you peel it off, it gives you these really cool snake scales. So you can see I'm just adding this around different parts of my wings, I guess you would call them. I'm also using some pre-made 3D printed spikes. They're actually teeth. They will fall off probably while it's drying, but they'll be hot glued back on. So they're just there so I don't know where they're going to sit. Using the end of a skewer to add some circles in it. And then I'm just going over and checking all angles, looking at the front, the back, the side, the underneath, and smoothing out any areas as I go. Hope you enjoy this activity and can't wait to see your monster can monsters that you produce.